Okay, so welcome everyone. This is the sample class for Writing 117, which is Writing, Rhetoric, and Satire. So I'm really excited to get started with you guys tonight. We're going to talk about different ethical questions when it comes to satire and, what constitutes effective satire, what is cutting it too close, all sorts of, different questions about how satire functions in popular media, and how it communicates certain messages to their audiences. So we'll have some time to discuss both what we talk about in the lecture. We're in the writing department, we're a very, discussion and kind of collaborative, heavy class style. We do studio style classes. And then there will also be time for a Q&A. So any questions you have for me with regards to the department, with regards to the school, all of that good stuff. So to start off, I guess I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Gina. I am a PhD student in the Composition and Cultural Rhetoric program at Syracuse, which is through the Writing Studies, Rhetoric, and Composition department. So I am deep into dissertation work. I've been at Syracuse for about 6 years now, or this is my 6th year in the program. So I know a lot about the school, a lot about the city, but I am originally from Chicago. And for my bachelor's and my master's, I went to Illinois State University. So I'm a Chicago girl living in Syracuse for now. But I've really enjoyed my time here. So I'm really happy to kind of show you guys some of what we have to offer in the university and in the writing department in particular. So really quick, why don't we just go around and if you guys want to just tell me your name and why you decided to take this sample class in particular. Jules, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Jules. I'm from Puerto Rico, and I decided to take this class because I'm majoring in film. And obviously, when making movies or shows or whatever, I want to include satire, but I want to know the limits and everything.
Okay, great. That sounds awesome. Yeah, we have a really great film program here, so that's really exciting. Anyone want to go next? I'm not the type of instructor who really likes to call on people, but I I will if we need to.
I'm Lauren. I'm actually, my daughter Kenna is the one signed up for this class, but she is at a choir rehearsal, so I told her I would hop on.
All right, well, welcome.
Her and taking notes. So I'm reliving college here. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
I'm Kimberly. I'm interested in design creative writing at Syracuse.
Excellent. Montana, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Montana, and I'm majoring in public policy, but I just thought that this sounded interesting.
Okay, awesome. Well, hopefully we can tie this into some of your interests too, especially with like issues of political and cultural satire. All right, Melanie and Vitor, who wants to be the one to keep us going?
My name is Vitor, and I want to major in international relations, but I'm just navigating as a curious person.
Awesome.
I'm Melanie, and I am majoring in history, but I've always liked writing, so I thought it was a good idea to take the sample class.
Awesome. Well, I am so happy to have you all here. Like I said, I am really excited to share some of what we do in the writing department and, sort of see how that can connect to all of the work that you guys are all doing, eventually in Syracuse. So let me go ahead and start my PowerPoint. We have a few different things that I want to talk about, and I'm going to try to keep it as broad as possible and give you guys some background because I know that not everyone is going to come in with the exact same background knowledge on satire. So here, Okay, here we go. So you guys should be seeing my PowerPoint now, and I'll go ahead and actually start the presentation. You may have seen that on the description for the sample class, I am centering this around the ethics of satire and mockery in popular culture. So I want to talk a bit about, whoops, hold on. All right, a bit about what satire and mockery each mean. And the definitions that I'm using are taken from the book Is Satire Saving Our Nation? Mockery in American Politics. And that's by Sophia A. McLennan and Remy Mazel. I'll talk a bit about this later at the end of the lecture, but this is a book that actually you will have access to through the Syracuse library. There's like an e-copy that's available for everyone to download. So if you're interested in learning more about satire, specifically political satire, this is a great source to check out. But I'm using their definitions of satire and mockery because I think they're some of the most clear and just kind of, easy to understand, easy to remember definitions of each term. So satire, as they are using the term, is any work that is dedicated to exposing human folly, and its goal is to inspire critical thinking and reasoned social engagement. So they really talk about satire as a genre that opens up discourse in a way that is just more inviting to people than, maybe more hardcore fact and data-based writing or public speaking. And because of the critical thinking factor, satire usually delivers some sort of message with it. There's something that is happening in terms of a call to action. And again, you are meant to think more deeply about an issue after engaging in satire on it. Whereas mockery is mostly just humor-based. And that can be its own value. It doesn't necessarily need to be this dichotomy of, here's this good type of writing and here's this bad type of writing. That's not the case. But mockery doesn't necessarily have the goal of actually delivering that message and inspiring critical thinking. Mockery is purely for the fun of it. And they kind of simplify that idea by just saying that mockery is really just making fun of a stupid situation, especially through things like exaggeration and just really being hyperbolic about a situation to the point of complete ridiculousness. So it's fun, it's very humorous, but it doesn't necessarily have that goal of inspiring thinking and delivering a message. Again, that's not to put this in a dichotomy of good versus bad, but just to kind of note that, these are two different types of writing with two different goals. So I want to give you guys some time to kind of think through the issues, one of the issues that we'll be talking about later on in the lecture and the discussion. So I want to take about 10 minutes. Let's see, on my clock, it's 6:13 right now. So I'm going to check back in at 6:23 with you guys. But I want you to just kind of jot down some thoughts, and think about a time that you saw someone take satire seriously, as in they didn't understand that they were seeing something that was humorous, that was a joke, that they couldn't really pick up on the fact that there was mockery or satirization happening. And then I want you to think about why you think that person mistook the satire for something serious. So again, we'll kind of come back to that in our discussion, but I just want to get those thoughts out there, get this going, and then we'll go more into the lecture with some different examples of satire in popular culture. Okay, so go ahead and take a minute to just kind of finish up whatever thoughts you are jotting down right now, or typing out, however you're choosing to do the free write. And yeah, we will kind of come back to these questions when we do a discussion after the lecture. So I want to keep it moving, and I have a few different examples of, just satire gone wrong. And then two more, I'm calling them case studies of more complicated and complex instances of satire in popular culture. So the first one that I want to go over is actually the namesake for the sample class. The kind of, infamous meme that's shared all the time of this guy, the bottom left of the slide, wearing the tank top that says satire requires a clarity of purpose and target, lest it be mistaken for and contribute to that which it intends to criticize. So the way that this meme actually came to be was that this posting on a website that sells queer clothing, queer themed clothing, the shop online listed a tank top that just said "no fats, no femmes" on the tank top. And you can see on the top right here of the slide, and actually it's not as easy to read, but they're saying, don't worry, we love our femmes and curvy girls, and also satire for that matter. This tank is perfect for the kids who'd like to add a little irony to their wardrobe and aren't afraid to make a statement. Either way, you're bound to attract attention and start conversations. So you have this website saying, oh, this is a satire of exclusionary social norms in the queer community. This very common phrase that people will see on dating apps that, they won't date people who are fat, they won't date femme people. But the interesting thing is that when someone made that meme and was pointing out, you don't necessarily have the ability to just tell if you're walking down the street and you see someone wearing this shirt, that it's done in a satirical way. There is not that clarity of purpose or target. So therefore, anyone who's going to see that without the context of knowing that this specific, very niche clothing store was selling this and saying in the description, oh, it's satire, don't worry. They don't have that, the knowledge of that. They don't have the ability to say, oh, that person's not actually making a hurtful statement. They are, satirizing this belief. So therefore, it might actually function just as the hurtful statement and not as satire. So again, that's sort of the birth of that meme. A very fitting context for the meme, I guess. Another really, at this point, it's getting older. I used to be able to say, oh, this is a recent example of satire gone wrong. But it was the 2008 New Yorker cover. And this was the year that, Obama was first running for president. And there were a lot of rumors going around during that election that Obama was a radical Muslim. He was an insurgent. A lot of unfounded, rumors, as I said. So this artist for this political cartoon on the cover of the New Yorker said that he was satirizing these rumors. However, if you're looking at that, you're going shopping and you see this just on the magazine rack, there's no context, there's no additional statement being made on the cover. So you don't know whether or not that cartoon is satirizing those claims or satirizing the Obamas themselves. So this is another instance of the message just really not coming through, and a moment where you have to wonder, is this functioning as satire, or is it just actually doing the hurtful thing that it claims to be satirizing? So these are both instances of satire really kind of failing to achieve its goal. And this is something that we talk a lot about in the study of rhetoric. How are you presenting the message that you want to portray, and how are the choices that you make when writing, drawing, however you're composing a message, how are the choices you're making during that composition process affecting the way that people will take in your message? And these are two really great examples of why it's important to think about the possible reception of the message that you're putting out there. Context is so important when it comes to satire and when it comes to satire being successful. Because if your audience doesn't have the proper knowledge of what is being satirized, if they're not familiar with the situation, or if they're just not really given enough context to even know that this could possibly be satire, they're not necessarily going to pick up on that. And again, you know, this can be really common with visual satire. You know, with the Obama, I have meme on this slide for some reason, it's a political cartoon. But with the Obama political cartoon, because it's entirely visual, there's no text, you would have to open up the magazine to see, oh, okay, you know, maybe if I'm going to flip to this article, I'll see that this is supposed to be a critique rather than something that's endorsing those rumors. But again, if you're seeing it quickly, you're just kind of like, whoa, what's happening here? And the other way that satire can sometimes fail, and we'll talk about this with these next few examples, is the idea of really taking things too far. So there are certain moments where, especially in more like, you know, pop culture, TV, movies, video games, as we'll see, sometimes the satire can be taken to a point where you really can't even distinguish it from what it's meant to be critiquing. So an example that I'll use all the time is if you're creating a racist character for, you know, a film, a TV show, a book, and you are doing this with the intent of satirizing racism in America. That can be a very excellent way of doing it when you have a character who's clearly meant to be, you know, mocked, a character who's clearly meant to showcase why, you know, this is not okay behavior, or why this is, you know, a problem in our society. But there are examples of this being done in a way that it's just so close to the actual problem that you're simply reproducing that problem. So the first kind of case study, like I said, that I want to talk about is the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So for those of you, you know, some people might be familiar with it, some people might not be. Always Sunny is a show that really works to satirize the more negative elements of our culture. And really some of the themes that pop up most often are ideas of selfishness. Really the characters can all be described as extremely selfish people, very much, you know, kind of hyper individualistic, you know, basic ignorance, you know, they don't want to learn how to do things in a more positive way. They don't want to learn more things about the world around them, and prejudice. And, you know, all three of these major themes kind of work together in how these characters are all, you know, developed over the course of the show. And again, a lot of times in the show, this works very well because the show is very clear about stating that these are negative characters. You're not supposed to like any of these people. And in fact, they're portrayed as awful people. But there are sometimes certain issues with how they approach satirizing a few different issues. So again, sometimes the satire is very successful. You know, there's a very famous scene in the show, and it's, I say very famous, maybe it's just the circles I'm in on the internet, but a scene that gets shared a lot, you know, in online spaces, that is satirizing the idea of taxes and mental health care, where one of the characters is kind of saying, oh, you know, it's a shame that this mental health center shut down, you know, now the people who are staying here have no place to go, and they're just kind of like left out on their own in society. And the other character who she's talking to is furious about this. And he's like, well, that's ridiculous. Why would they close this place? We need to open this back up. And she's like, well, I guess it was an issue of taxes. You know, we'll have to pay more taxes if we want to run the mental health facility. And then he's going, what? That's ridiculous. And she's like, well, then I guess we're going to have to be okay with, you know, mentally ill people being left to their own devices. And he's like, what? That's it. That's ridiculous. So like that kind of contradictory belief of we should open this place again, but we also shouldn't fund it with taxes. That's, you know, a version of satire where it's a very clear target, a very clear purpose, and it's done in a way that, you know, it's so ridiculous that this person is just kind of circling around these contradictory beliefs that you can identify the satire very well. But there are other moments where, you know, it kind of starts to get a bit more muddy. So we'll talk later about an episode where they satirized the process of getting welfare. And there are a few different issues with the episode that sort of make the satire fall a bit flat. or moments where, you know, you have one bit of effective satire and then some things that actually work to reproduce different harmful beliefs. And then, of course, the same is true with some of their satirization of racism and homophobia in our society, where, you know, they are trying to have these characters that, again, they're supposed to be awful people doing awful things, but, you know, they'll have characters who are performing in blackface while trying to condemn racism, or characters who are, you know, using homophobic slurs and, you know, kind of presenting a bit of, you know, kind of harmful stereotypes in their characters, in particular a trans character, while they are trying to condemn homophobia and transphobia. So it's kind of, you know, a double-edged sword in that way, that sometimes they can have this, you know, really great, really close-cutting, very edgy satire that still works. And sometimes it kind of, you know, the scales tip too far in the other direction. So again, the two episodes that I really think are the best examples of like, this almost goes too far in the other direction. The first one that I had mentioned earlier, the episode Dennis and Dee Go on Welfare. And Dennis and Dee, these two characters, are trying to essentially, you know, lie and cheat their way into getting welfare. They decide we don't want to work anymore. So they're saying we're going to go into the office and pose as the type of people we think are on welfare. So Dee poses as an intellectually disabled person, and Dennis poses as someone who is dealing with an addiction. And as they're doing this, they're using really disparaging language towards both of these populations. I'm not going to repeat that language, but in particular, how they are representing someone with an intellectual disability. You know, they're doing this kind of really great biting satire of how people think the welfare system functions versus how it actually functions. But then at the same time, they're throwing certain populations under the bus in order to make that satire happen. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a few episodes that are called The Gang Makes Lethal Weapon, and I think it's like 6 and 7, or maybe it's 5 and 6, either way, where all of the actors are performing in blackface throughout the episodes. So they're trying to say, oh, hey, right, like, you know, this is a really bad thing to do. This is an inherently racist activity, but it just did not go over well. You know, it just, you have this issue where, again, they're trying to showcase that, you know, performing in blackface is bad, it's racist. And then they're also performing in blackface in a way that really does not make it clear enough that, that they are condemning this practice. So again, you know, you have these two cases where the audience is supposed to understand already that the characters are doing something harmful, but then you have harmful language and harmful behaviors that almost, you know, if not fully nullify the message, even just cause new problems in what type of rhetoric they're putting out into the world. Grand Theft Auto 5 is the next case study I wanted to look at. It is, you know, a lot of people know it's a really popular video game series. And this is kind of that over-the-top hyperbolic mockery. It's not so much satire. They're not necessarily trying to put forth a, you know, a more, you know, I guess a deeper message. They're not necessarily trying to inspire critical thinking. They're just having fun and mocking different elements of American society. And they have long and, you know, very proudly mocked basically every end of the political spectrum. So it's just kind of everyone gets a hand on that ball. So they have these ideas that they just take to the most extreme end of, you know, that scenario. So this is done a lot through commercials that pop up over the course of the game on the radio. And it's mostly just, you know, kind of humorous bits of social commentary. There's a commercial for medical cocaine, which is obviously poking fun at, you know, some of the prescriptions that can be legally obtained that aren't that different from, you know, other illicit street drugs. There's a commercial that's advocating for hitting children and saying it works wonders. Like, you know, your kids will never talk again. You know, these are very clearly meant to be ridiculous, You know, the idea of mandatory concealed carry for all, it will be illegal to not carry a gun. Those are very clearly meant to be just very over the top, very exaggerated, very hyperbolic, you know, mocking of just different ideas and different, you know, just interesting, funny facets of American society. But then there's also these moments of more subtle satire that tend to fall short, probably because they're seen in contrast with this very over the top, very exaggerated satire and mockery. So GTA as a series also satirizes the idea of violence and bigotry in our society, but a lot of times it ends up contributing to the same issues of violence and bigotry. You know, so you have this issue where maybe you have a very misogynistic character or a very racist character, and the game is kind of just taking that at face value. It's meant to be this satirization of how much violence is in our culture, how much bigotry is in our culture. But at the same time, we as the players are meant to empathize with the characters that we're playing as. You are literally stepping into their shoes as the player and controlling their actions. So if you have this character that, again, you know, to use my example of a misogynistic character, let's say he's, you know, engaging in just all of the, like, you know, things that probably none of us would do in real life, you know, either verbally or physically abusive behaviors. If you are playing that out in his in-game character, does that carry more of a risk of reinforcing those ideas because you are stepping into that role as the player? And this is such a hotly debated issue in terms of, you know, what we are meant to represent in especially video games, but really in any form of popular media. You know, what is the line? What is too much to represent? And what causes something to no longer be an effective satire and actually start to reproduce the harmful ideas that they're trying to satirize in the first place. So I want to open it up now for a bit of a group discussion. So again, I said when we did the free write, you know, we'd have time to share some of those thoughts later. But I also have some extra questions that after kind of exploring all of these issues of satire, how it's produced, how it functions in culture, and these different examples of both, you know, more positive utilizations of satire and more negative and harmful utilizations of satire. So like I said, I am not someone who really likes to call on people. I am happy to just have anyone, you know, contribute, and we can just have a very kind of free-flowing, natural discussion that way. And if anyone has a question that they want to start with, that's fine. We don't need to go in order, just, you know, whatever thoughts people have. Or even if you have something you want to contribute that's not on this discussion slide, that's fine.
I wrote my free write about the time when The Onion, a satirical news website, gave Kim Jong-un the title of sexiest man alive.
Oh, yeah. The Onion is a good one because that's one that if people aren't paying attention to what they're seeing on social media, sometimes they can end up sharing something based on the title of the article and not realize, oh, I'm sharing something from a satire site. Let's see, we also have a message in chat here. Oh, excellent. Yes. Yeah, Kim Jong-un named The Onion sexiest man alive for 2012. So right, that's another one that yeah, just the idea of it's a great satire, but yeah, there's definitely some potential issues in, you know, if someone sees that and takes it seriously, what is the effect of that? Right, okay, yes. Yeah, and this NPR article that Kimberly has sent as the sexiest man alive gets the Onion taken seriously. And that was definitely, I remember that when it happened in real time. And yeah, it was definitely a moment where again, people are starting to realize, oh, I have to read the articles that I'm seeing because things just on the headline alone are not necessarily giving you the full story and can lead to those effects. So again, I think you have that issue of context. Yeah. Anyone else?
I use the example of the Truman Show, and how it uses both satire and mocking, because it mocks like, people who like heavily follow reality shows and who like take it seriously, but like they don't realize that those are like real people that they're seeing on TV and not just like characters and stuff. And also how the satire message is that the world Truman lives in is a parallel to the world like the media shows us. Like it's all fake. Like the media is all fake.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the idea of taking satire seriously, is that one where you think that was maybe happening in the film itself, or one where you saw that maybe either hitting or missing in real life?
I think it's more for us, the people who actually watched it, because I don't think people realize that it's a satire underneath it all.
Okay. Yeah, and that is like such a an interesting thing to really grapple with, the extent of, are people actually are people picking up on satire when it happens? And again, I think, part of why I want to grapple with these questions is figuring out, what needs to happen on that writing end. How do we really allow for more effective satire, more rhetorically effective writing in general? How do we reach audiences? So yeah, does anyone else have anything they want to share in terms of the discussion for what we've talked about?
I would just say I've seen some on like Instagram accounts where people will be doing this kind of extreme satire, and you'll get these comments where people have these just crazy reactions, and then someone's like, it's satire, it's satire. And there's part of you that even questions, is it satire? Are they doing this just, to get the reactions? And so I just thought that was an interesting way it's kind of played into modern social media.
Yeah, that is such a great example. And it's something that I see a lot too. And again, that question of, is this something that people are now just falling back on when they get a certain reaction to different things that they're posting? Or is it an issue where you have people who aren't picking up on it? Is that because it wasn't communicated properly on the writer's end? Or is it something that people are missing different cues on the audience end?
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell what the creator's goal is, almost to do the satire, but then also to get the reaction from the people who don't realize it's satire. It's kind of like they're playing both ends of the spectrum, it seems.
Yeah, and I think that issue of, right, so at that point, is it functioning like satire is meant to function to inspire that critical thought if the critical thought turns out to not be happening, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is such a the way that satire really crosses over into social media has been so interesting for me as a rhetoric scholar, because again it gets into really big issues with what the intent of a post or sharing something, or the intent of a conversation is versus how people are going to receive that as an audience.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one last little chance for this discussion, and then we can move on to more of the general Q&A for people.
I just wanted to go ahead and answer the last discussion question.
Okay.
When it says, who do you see as the person who bears the primary responsibility? I want to say both, because as a writer, you have to have accountability of what it is you're writing, and, you know, have the consciousness that what you're writing is, it's how, like, let me put it in a way that can be understand. Like when you write something, you have to be conscious of the reaction of others, but that's where the audience comes in too, because when you don't have critical thinking, you're bound to just fall flat. You're not going to understand it because you don't have the thought process necessary to get what the writer's trying to say. So for me, it's more of both, but leaning towards the writer, because you have to have a target audience. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. There's an idea that we sometimes talk about in writing studies. It's the idea of reciprocity between a writer and the audience. And that's actually exactly what you're talking about, that there's work that needs to be done on both sides for a communicative exchange to work the way it's supposed to. And, you know, sometimes there can be, you know, a bit of, you know, one side has to end up doing more work. So again, if you're a writer and you know you have an audience that might struggle with some of the content that you're putting out, that's when some more of the responsibility does fall on you to really try to get your message across clearly and effectively. Other times there's moments where, you know, the writer's doing all they can, but if you don't have a receptive audience, you know, sometimes there's just not much more you can do. So ideally, you have both people coming together to really make sure that this exchange is happening in as effective a manner as possible. Okay. Well, thank you all for sharing your thoughts. I want to just move on. You know, like I said earlier, these are just some further resources for if you want to read more about the issue of satire. This first one, this is the book I mentioned earlier, and it's a book that the full ebook is available on the library website. And then the second resource, it's by the same author, and it's a shorter article talking about, you know, political comedy and the varying levels of effectiveness. And it touches on a lot of the issues we talked about today. You know, how far is too far with the comedy that we write and put out into the world? Versus what is that kind of sweet spot of effectiveness when we're talking about, you know, in McLennan's case, it's specifically political comedy, but there's, you know, this applies to any type of satire, you know, whether it's cultural, political, social, anything. But yeah, we do have a little bit more time. So if anyone has any questions for me, you know, about the department, about the school, anything that you want to know.
Yes. Can this class be considered as an elective for any major?
So this class in particular, the Writing 117, and I have been teaching it this spring, so that's why I'm doing the sample class for it. But yes, it is an elective class, and I believe there's, oh my goodness, and now I feel bad because I'm forgetting what exact, I know there's specific requirements that people in my class this semester have been taking it for. I know that a few of my students are taking it because they're in a program that requires them to take, you know, a writing focused class. You know, it's primarily writing focused. And there are other people who need it for more of like a you know, pop or, you know, culture and media focused class. So yeah, I think it would depend on the major. I know there's different requirements and different things that, you know, a major will allow as something that fulfills those requirements. But yeah, in my class currently, I have a bunch of different majors. There are some people who are affiliated with the Writing Studies department, but actually most of my students are from other departments, you know, people who are in Newhouse. I have a few people who are in the Bandier program, actually, you know, the music business program. So there's really a wide range of majors that this class counts as an elective for. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions before we go for the night? Okay, well, I will take that as a no, but I do just want to point out, if really quickly you want to write down the email for Heather Thompson, who is our academic support coordinator in the Writing Studies, Rhetoric, and Composition department. If you have any questions about the department, if you at any point are interested in maybe picking up the major or even a minor in Writing Studies, this is a department that really develops the skills that, you know, we all use, that we all need in being able to communicate effectively. So even if you have a major that you are dead set on, you're not changing, the Writing Studies minor can be so helpful when it's paired with so many different majors, because again, we're all about teaching you guys how to communicate effectively and how to avoid some of the failures in communication that we talked about tonight. So this is really something that, you know, can be a great supplement to any academic work that you're doing here at Syracuse. So again, that's the email for Heather Thompson. She can answer any questions you have about the department, about the major, or if you have any questions for me specifically, I also have my email up there. So if at any point you want to, you know, ask further questions about the lecture, if I can direct you to any other resource on campus, I am more than happy to. But it was so great to have you all here with me tonight. I hope that you had fun kind of listening to me geek out about different issues of satire and ethics in popular media. But yeah, thank you for coming, and I will go ahead and end the recording now.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.